So, in about a week, in about 10 days, I'll be hiking the Tour du Mont Blanc. And this weekend I thought, let's do some training, let's do some testing of new gear and head into the woods. And instead of making a silent hiking video like I usually do, let's do a Q&A, because I've been getting a couple of questions from you all. So I fielded some questions on Instagram. And yeah, let's just dive straight in and get to the first one. So the first question is about wild camping. Isn't it illegal? Are there big fines? Stuff like that. I've had this question quite a few times. There's quite a few places where wild camping is not allowed. It's just simply illegal. So the short answer is don't do it. Find a campground, ask around any locals. Maybe there's mountain refuges. The slightly longer answer is sometimes there's no other option, and it's also really nice to wake up in the woods or in the mountains. So I'm not suggesting you do go wild camping, but if you happen to be, just follow a couple of rules. First off, don't go in protected areas, don't go into nature reserves, stuff like that. You pitch your tent when it gets dark at dusk, and you get out there at dawn as soon as possible. You don't leave any traces, like they say, leave nothing but footprints, no trash, nothing like that. And also don't make any open fires. You can, of course, use your gas stove, but no open fires. And if you stick to those rules, I think you're mostly fine. I've had the question, were you ever caught wild camping? The answer is yes. It's, I think, like 20 years ago. It's a long time ago. We were young, we were stupid, and yeah, it was the middle of summer and we made a big open fire, which was of course attracting all the attention. And yeah, some locals, they saw that, they picked us up with these trucks and dropped us off at the edge of the woods to meet with the police, who were actually very kind and very considerate, and they just left us off with a warning. But that was a good lesson, but that was a long time ago, yeah. Lieven asked the question, how do you choose a good place for camping in the wild in Belgium? Nothing particular about Belgium, except that it's densely populated, so yeah, you might have a bit harder time to find a good wild camping spot. But other than that, look at your map. You want to go away from roads, you want to go away from buildings and towns, of course. Sometimes you can look for dead ends on the map and see if you can find a place there. Also, you can look on the map and look at the elevation and see if you can find a flat spot. That's really useful. And then also a great tip is Strava has this feature where you can see a heat map. The blue lines, they tell you where people have been going for a run, for a hike. Yeah, you want to avoid those dark blue lines and see if you can go to a place where there's less blue on those heat maps. It's a great tip for finding like a quiet place where you're not going to run into hikers or other joggers in the morning, stuff like that. Also nice to have when you're looking for a spot is a great view, a place to get water. You want to be covered from wind, but those are all extras. If you just can find a good flat spot, that's a big win. I've also used picnic huts, these small shelters, stuff like that. You can use all that for a camping spot. Fanny asked how you choose the trekking trail. Yeah, the question, how do I plan my routes? There's a couple of ways. You can just use existing trails. That's pretty easy. You just look on websites, you look on maps. There's this GR trails in Europe. I think they're all over Europe, which are usually pretty nice if you go outside of the cities and the villages. These existing trails are usually well maintained, well marked. They're fairly easy, or at least you get a sense of how hard they are from the description. So that's a great option. But it can also be really nice to diverge from the popular paths and yeah, plot your own route. You can start from points of interest. I've looked a lot at Google Maps, just finding nice spots where there are lots of woods, and just use an app like I use Komoot a lot. There's also All Trails, and just plot a route and find great spots. You're probably going to run into trails that are just have disappeared, or that are private, or there's obstructions, but then you have to improvise, and yeah, you learn by doing. Also, it helps a lot if you learn how to read a map, to know the types of vegetation, to read elevation lines so you don't run into a straight wall, for example, or very steep inclines or stuff like that. So learn how to read maps, it's a good idea. So next up, Rebecca asks, do you recommend some training or something to prepare for hikes? Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm doing a training right now, so I'll be doing big mountains in about a week. So I thought, well, let's go for a hike this weekend. I picked some pretty steep inclines and descents. So can anybody walk 30 kilometers in a day? The answer is no, but are most people capable of doing it? Yes, if they train a little. You don't need a whole program or to do months of training. You just need like a basic level of fitness. You have a bit of core strength, good muscles in your legs. You just build up a little bit. You fill your backpack with heavier weights, and you do a lot of stairs perhaps, or just go hiking in the woods and build up and see where you get. I do a lot of sports. I do running, cycling, CrossFit throughout the year. So I have a pretty decent level of fitness, but still I go do these longer walks to prepare for those big mountain stages. And if you want to do some more training, I really recommend a YouTube channel from a guy called Chase. His channel is Chase Mountains, and he has a lot of great videos on stretches, on basic exercises you can do at home. So that's really recommended. I link it up in the description. Next question comes from Jeroen and Jorka. They ask about sleeping pad recommendations. So when you're talking about sleeping pads, there's basically three main factors. There's weight, there's comfort, and there's insulation, and also price. But you have to make it like a balancing act between those three factors. If you talk about insulation, you're talking about R value, which goes from 1 for like the basic summer sleeping pads. They provide very little insulation, to like 3 or 4 maybe for really good 3-season pad that you can take in the winter for 1 or 2 nights, and then up to 6, 7, 8 for like the really sleeping on snow for multiple nights pads. There's nothing that beats the Thermarest brand, the Neo Air. Like they have the Uberlight and the X-Light. There's nothing that beats that in terms of the combination of weight and insulation. They're super light, they're super warm, they're really good pads, but they have one problem, at least for me. They make a lot of sound, they make a lot of noise.
The X-Light here.
It's often compared to like sleeping on a potato chip bag, which is not what you want. If you roll over in the night, some people have no problem with it at all, but I really dislike it. So I went for another option. I looked around. I settled on this Nemo brand. So this is the, if you can see that, that's the Tensor insulated. I picked the regular wide version, which is rectangular version, and it's really wide, it's really comfortable, and it doesn't make a sound. It's not the lightest, it's not the smallest, but it's a balancing act. There's a great comparison video online as well. I'll post that below. That goes through like the main options there. But I think you can go wrong with either of those brands, Sea2 Summit, Thermarest, Nemo, and you have to pick what suits you best. And then the final question for today came from Marianne, and others have been asking me this as well, about my sleeping quilt, my decision to switch from a regular sleeping bag to a quilt. I went with a quilt for 2 reasons. First off, I'm an active sleeper. In a traditional mummy sleeping bag, you toss and turn and you wake up all constricted and your knees are against the insulation, so it flattens, which makes it less efficient. And these quilts, they are, you should consider it like a blanket more. As It's from a brand called Cumulus. It's a Polish brand. This one is it's very small, very light. I had a custom version made, which is slightly wider than the standard version, because I have pretty broad shoulders and I like to have a bit more space. So a quilt basically is this sleeping bag that is open on the back. It does have these straps, and you can strap these around your sleeping pad, and then basically have a blanket where you can sleep under. And if you turn around, the quilt doesn't move with you. So yeah, it's like a regular blanket. The straps make sure it doesn't come loose, so there's no draft that goes under. And I had my first night on it last night. Really enjoyed it, really liked it. I actually used a liner as well from Sea to Summit that just goes in. So I make sure don't make this one dirty or sweaty. And it provides an extra layer of insulation as well. It's down, it's actual goose down, which is not my first choice, like ethically, but there's nothing that goes above it in terms of weight and insulation. So that's the sleeping quilt. So I think this video has been going on long enough. There were a couple of more questions, but those will be for a next Q&A video. Of course, I'll be shooting a video on the Tour du Mont Blanc. You can expect that somewhere in September, and you can follow me on Instagram for some updates in between, and I'll see you then in the next one. Bye.